Hey, kia ora. How you doing? Good to connect with you. Hey, so as you know, or if you don't know, over summer we go online for 3 Sundays, just because Hamilton totally empties out. So we're in Kirikiriroa, and yeah, everyone goes to the beach or just kind of hides for those Sundays around here. So it's really hard to actually run church. So we pre-record stuff and chuck these messages up. So what we've been encouraging the church to do over the last 3 or 4 weeks is to be thinking ahead and to invite some friends around and have morning tea together, lunch, whatever, and watch a sermon and chat and discuss it, maybe do some worship together, video worship, or just play a playlist or something. So yeah, so hopefully that's what you're doing over summer. So this is the first in a series of 3 messages that we're doing just over that kind of Christmas period, and then we'll be back the 15th of January, and we're back together for the first Sunday for the year. So that'll be awesome to be back together. Hey, so we've given this little 3-week summer series this title, Intentionally Directional, right? Intentionally directional, because as people we want direction, right? We want some kind of focus, and as Christians we know the best direction is always going to come from God, right? Because if we're left to like steer the wheel of life, we end up in the ditch or upside down or making a stupid decision and we crash, right? We all know that. So that's where we're going in these 3 ones, thinking not so much about making New Year's resolutions, but more about how do we be more intentionally directional and be guided by God, right? That's where we're kind of going. So, and I found this really interesting. So I was kind of thinking, oh man, what about New Year's resolutions? How many do they work, and do they not, and what's happening? And I go to a gym and they say every year that for the first 2 or 3 weeks after the 1st of January, they just get so many new people signing up. It's just crazy with New Year's resolutions. And so I did a bit of hunting around, and I was reading in Forbes magazine, and Forbes magazine had this really interesting article about New Year's resolutions, and CNN, which is a newspaper over in the States, a news source over in the States, they talked about how 80% of resolutions have failed by the middle of February. And I was like, wow, 80%, that's terrible. So only 20% last. And so yeah, and the Forbes magazine was explaining why, and they had 3 top reasons, which I thought were really interesting. So I'm just going to go through these, and we're thinking about how do I be more directional about God. And if you're like me, you've already made all these different decisions of following God or reading your Bible more or attending church more regularly, whatever. And some of them work and some of them don't, right? So they're kind of like resolutions. So what did Forbes magazine find were the top 3 reasons of why New Year's resolutions, or we're going to just say decisions to be more Jesus-y, fail? And the last one's really interesting. So the first one is this: it's your consciousness that needs to change before your behavior can change. It's your consciousness that needs to change before your behavior can change. And so what they're meaning by that is that it's all good to make the change, but unless you've started changing the way you think about it, then it's just really not going to last. Makes sense, right? Pretty simple. The gym is always an easy example. If I just say, I've just got to go to the gym more, until I really have come up with a reason of why, and I've really changed my thinking on why I haven't been going to the gym, unless I do that, the change is not really going to happen. And I was thinking about it in terms of Christianity, and it's so key. We can read stuff in the Bible, we can want to attend church, we can want to whatever, but until I really change my thinking about why is this so important, why should I read my Bible more? Just saying I'm going to read my Bible more every day, or I'm going to attend church, I need to think why. So that was their first reason. Here's the second one, this is a real obvious one, right? Number 2, you don't have an accountability structure to help you sustain change. And I was like, man, that's so true. Hey, you know, if you say the gym and you're like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym, and I'm going to get my friend, and we're going to go 3 times a week, and we're both going to go, the probability you'll go it must be infinitely more than if it's just you, right, or it's just me, because things come up, or I've had a hard day at work, or I ate too much pizza and I can't get to the gym. And I think it's the same in Christianity, right? There's so many mentions through the Bible about the importance of accountability and having someone wiser than you kind of guiding you and leading you. And that's something I'm really passionate about. So there's a bunch of guys that I either formally or informally kind of mentor in the church, and we catch up. I have mentors in my life, and I know having a mentor, someone holding me accountable, just changes everything, right? It changes everything. And here's the last one. This one's the real interesting one. This is a bit of a like, huh? So let me explain it. You are actually scared of, so this is from Forbes, right? You're actually scared of and completely resistant to achieving this big goal you won't let yourself. I'll read it again. You're actually scared of and completely resistant to achieving this big goal and you won't let yourself. I was like, man, that's so interesting. And what they were talking about in the article is that if you weren't scared of it, or if there wasn't some massive obstacle in the road, then you would have already made the change. And so they're like, you've got to figure out, what are you worried of? What are you scared of? What is the obstacle that's stopping you? Figure that out, process it, and figure out how you're going to deal with that. And I was like, man, that just totally makes sense, right? I think this is really true in Christianity. A lot of people, the common one I hear from people is struggling to really believe what God says about them in the Bible. And they go, I know, I listen to the Lauren Daigle song, I listen to the Hillsong song and all this about it's who God says I am, but it just doesn't change within me. And I was thinking on this, I was like, it'd be really interesting to process with that person, or if that's you, to think about what's stopping you from really believing that? What's stopping you from allowing that change to happen? Because there's something you're afraid of, or some obstacle, or something you're holding on to that's stopping you from making that change, right? So anyway, that was the Falls. I thought it was kind of interesting. So, but we're talking about this direction, which to me, real similar to these kind of New Year's resolutions. I want to be intentionally directional and guided by God, right? But so often we wander off track. So what's some keys to not wandering off track? What are some keys to being intentionally directional, being guided by God? I'm going to look at Psalm 23. I love Psalm 23. And read it all the time, and I've memorized it, and I quote it often when I go for walks and stuff. And I'm just going to look at the first couple of verses. So here it is: the Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me beside peaceful streams. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. Whoa, I just love it. I'd love like 5 hours to unpack every line in this, but if I did, you would turn this off and go for a swim or something. So I'm just going to look at verses 2 and 3, right? And I've just got 2 little quick thoughts here. Here's the first one. This is kind of obvious, right? Feeding and rest is essential for direction. Feeding and rest is essential for direction. If we're not going to be well fed, if we're not going to be resting in God, we're never going to hear his voice, right? We're never going to be able to be directed by him. If we're too busy running around like a maniac, I always joke, I'm sure there's so many times that God's like, seriously, if you just slow down for 5 minutes and listen to me, I'll sort out your issues. But we're just running around like maniacs trying to sort stuff. And God's like, all right, I'm here if you want me, sort of thing. And I love it how it says that in the Psalm. He lets me rest in green meadows. He leads me. He doesn't force me. He's like, hey, the rest is here. The green meadow's here if you want to come over here. Oh my gosh. As you know, I used to have sheep. So we used to live out in the country, and we had sheep. We only had like 4 to 7 is kind of all we had. So, but I still classify myself as a shepherd in very large quotes. All my farmer friends mock me for even thinking about that. But when we had sheep, I was always amazed how sensitive they are. Sheep are dumb, they're idiots, but they're really sensitive to what's going on around them. Obviously fireworks is the worst. So one year we had friends who wanted to come out from town and let off fireworks, and I was like, yeah, it should be cool. And we only had like an acre. So I put the sheep in the furthest paddock, the paddocks were tiny, away from the house, and we did fireworks right at the other end of our little section. But still, as soon as they went off, you just heard the sheep go crazy, and I was like, no. Then the next minute the sheep were going boosting past us, and so they'd run through 2 fences, proper sheep fencing all put up properly, just smashed it in their fear and terror, and then we're running around the section like crazy. It was like insane, right? Even when cows were across the fence in one of the farmers' paddocks next door, when the cows are moved or the cows are being upset, you could see the sheep all like doot, 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 doot. And horses, there were horses about 3 paddocks away, and if you heard them, in my amazing horse skills, neighing nervously, instantly the sheep are kind of like doot, doot, doot. What's happening, what's going on? They're real sensitive, right? So this is where I'm going. So the one of the commentaries I read linked the first line of verse 3 back to verse 2, and I thought, oh my gosh, that made so much sense to me. So let me explain that and keep thinking about my crazy sheep. This is it here, and what they were saying is this line here, he renews my strength, is kind of the result from this. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense, because otherwise you're like, well, how does he renew my strength? Yeah, by guiding me, that's definitely a key part. But I found this so interesting, and so what they're saying is, if you want to have your strength renewed in God, and I'm going to come back to that. One of the key ways is to be resting, right? To be being led by God to peaceful places. And when that happens, when I rest, when I calm down in my crazy life of running around like a maniac, when I remember God's leading me to these places, when I allow him to lead me, when I open my spiritual and my physical eyes to see the places of rest and peace that God is bringing me to, or God is leading me into, then my strength will be renewed. It makes sense, right? to me, it makes total sense. But I love how God doesn't force us, he allows us. And it's like God says, well, it's up to you, man. The peace is here, the rest is here. And therefore the strengthening is here, the guidance, the direction is here. But it's up to you. I'm kind of holding it out if you want it. Now, I'm going to say this again in a minute. This is not easy. I'm not for a second saying this is easy, because a lot of us run such busy, and maybe because we're badly prioritized, but busy, fast lives, to slow down and see the peace God offers us and see the rest and therefore the strength and guidance he's offering us. That can be a massive change. So I'm not just saying, yeah, just slow down. I'm not saying that. That's something that maybe over this summer would be a really good thing for you to process. If God's offering me rest, if he's leading me beside peaceful streams, if those are going to increase my strength, my spiritual vitality, and I think my physical vitality, because I think there's a very strong connection. I don't think we're disconnected beings. I think our emotional, mental, spiritual, physical state is very connected in. If I want that, I need to listen to God's guidance and his leading. And I wrote this down here. There's a huge danger that if I've been running too fast for too long and missing these green pastures and peaceful streams that the Lord's been leading to, I may need to take some drastic action to recalibrate my life and my soul. I can simply become too fried or too thin to see his leading anymore. Does it make sense? Some people I talk to are like, I just don't see it. My life is so full and so busy. And again, in love, I'd say, and sometimes badly prioritized, right? And you know what I'm saying when we're honest, right? It's so busy and so hectic and so crazy. There is no peace. God's not offering me peace. I'm like, well, he literally is. Otherwise, this psalm is a lie, which means God lies, which means we might as well throw Christianity out the window. But what I'm saying is sometimes we've been running so hard and fast for so long, we're missing that. And it's going to take a really big effort to turn our life around to look for that. But for a lot of us, it's just a matter of slowing down and bringing some other key things into our lives, right? I think it makes sense. Like, there's a simple way I think about it. I have a sister that lives up in Kerikeri, so it's a 5.5 hour drive from here, depending on Auckland traffic. Oh my gosh, got to time it right. And just north of Whangarei, there's some beautiful bush. And I just drove through there. Where are we now? I'm recording this on a Monday. I came back from visiting my sister on Saturday, so I drove back through Saturday. And it was raining and it was just so beautiful in the bush. And I was like, oh, I just really want to stop. And because for me, a bush, when I go in New Zealand bush, I just so feel the presence of God and I connect with God. And I really wanted to stop, but I really wanted to get home too, because it's a long drive. And I was thinking about the sermon. I was like, see, here I am, I'm being dumb. I know if I paused even for 20 minutes, half an hour, and just went for a little walk in that bush, I would find peace and rest and therefore strength and guidance and direction, right? But I'm like, no, we're on a mission, we must get home. We're just, well, I'm a nutter. You might be amazing and have all this sorted out, right? So here's a little question. I wonder how often we miss the nourishment, the rest, the restoration that God offers us. He's offering it. We see that, right? So I wonder how many times this week, this month, this last year, the creator of the universe was like, hey, come aside, just rest with me a while. And I missed it because I was just running too fast. I pulled too much stuff into my life, or maybe you missed it. So a couple of questions here. What would be a place, you know, as I'm even saying this, that you know God is saying, here is a place of peace and rest for you. You know, when you do that thing, or you go to that place, or you whatever, it's a place of peace, a place of rest with God, right? Where would that place be? Where do you know you go and God nourishes your soul, right? And how could you incorporate that into your new year, right? How could you incorporate that so your direction, you're being more intentionally directed by him rather than just running around and missing his voice. Here's the second point. Listening to the leading is essential for direction. I've been talking about that already, right? This is kind of obvious. Listening to the leading is essential for direction. It's not rocket science. Here's that verse 3 again. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. And I just love this whole psalm. He renews my strength. If I slow down enough to listen to his guidance, I'm going to see him taking me to a place of rest, a place of restoration. He's always guiding me, but so often I'm just running too fast. My schedule was too full. My days, my evenings, my weekends are too full. And sometimes with dumb stuff, and we know that, right? Sometimes there's dumb stuff in there, and we know we need to make some changes so we find these places of rest. But this second line, there's a comma, so it's these two bits here, has really challenged me as I've been thinking about it. He guides me along right paths, bringing honour to his name. What is that about, right? And this really challenged me. So back to my crazy sheep. If you came to my house when we lived out in the country, which was a year ago, and you knew about sheep, I would expect you'd be like, oh, let's go check out the sheep, right? And we'd wander down there and I'd do my farmer impressions and whatever. Now, if you knew about sheep and you looked at them and you're like, whoa, and they had like no grass and the water was green or even empty in the trough, and they're real scrawny and maybe a bit fly blown or hadn't been shorn, or their hooves are all whatever, you'd be like, bro, I'm looking at your sheep. You are a terrible shepherd. Oh my gosh, right? Other way around, if you'd come out and you were like, my sheep were looking fine, and I don't know how to tell if sheep look fine. To me, they look a little bit fat, not too skinny, but then maybe that's not right. Their wool's freshly shorn and their toenails are nicely clipped and I've polished their teeth. No, I don't know. You know what I mean though? If you look at them, you're like, wow, these look like great sheep because you're a shepherd. It would reflect on me. You'd be like, good job, bro. You're doing a good job of being a shepherd, right? So think about that, and then this is this verse, and this is what I was thinking. I've never really stopped to contemplate how my attitude about my own rest and rush reflects on my true shepherd. When people look at my life and my soul, what does that say about my shepherd? What does my schedule say about my God? I want to say that last bit again. When people look at my life and my soul, what does that say about my shepherd? What does my schedule say about my God? Doesn't make sense, right? If people are looking at you and they're like, man, I don't want any part of your Christianity because your life is crazy. You're not at peace. You're not resting. You're not by green meadows. You are running like a maniac. You're burnt out and fried. And what does that say about what honour does that bring to God's name? Nothing. I'm saying this carefully. And again, I'm not saying so. Just change it. Come on. It's a big thing, but it's really confronted me lately. When someone says to me, oh, bro, you're a pastor, how you doing? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just so worn out and stressed, I'm going to explode. That means my God is a really bad shepherd, right? But instead, if I'm following this verse and I'm finding places of rest and peace, when someone says, how you doing? And I'm like, man, I'm doing great, man. It's real busy. So at the moment, I have two teams that I run here at church. I have the church team, my church staff, and I also have the cafe staff. So I oversee the cafe, and I have meetings with the cafe staff, and Jade, our manager, is awesome and stuff like that. And sometimes I have to jump in and work on the till or do dishes or whatever. So my life is really full because I kind of have two pretty busy parts of my life. But I'm trying to be real intentional to bring honour to his name. I'm trying to be real intentional to run hard, right? And I work some big hours some weeks with the crazy stuff going on in the church and the cafe. So I try and run real hard, work really hard. But at the same time, I'm looking for those places of peace and rest and refreshment, because that renews my strength. When I listen to his guidance, that reflects well on God. It brings honour to his name. Right? I love that, eh? So we've talked about it. What's some changes you know you need to make as you've listened to this? You've listened to these verses, eh? What are some changes you need to make? God will guide you. So let me pray for you. Yeah, kia ora tō. I pray for this cool person or people listening now. You know, a lot of us, I'm going to say this carefully, God, but a lot of us foolishly just run too fast and too hard. And our souls are thin. Our souls are worn out. We want to be people that are being guided by you because we're listening to your voice. We're being guided by you, and in that we're living and we're living hard and fast, and we're running, doing stuff. But in the midst of that, we are finding places of peace and rest, and that is bringing strength to us and guidance and direction from you. Guide us, God. Just pray for someone now. If they're listening and they're like, oh, this is so terrifying. I don't even know how to make this change. I pray you'll give them some wisdom to talk to someone they know. Give me a call, Joe's a call, someone in our church who's cool. I'm a good friend to call and say, hey, can we meet up and just talk? How do I make some changes? I'm going to make some changes. I'm not in a place of rest. I pray all this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen. Cool. Have an amazing rest of your day, night, whatever's going on. Cool. Ka kite anō.